Good afternoon, happy Wednesday, and welcome back to yet another installment of Redcat Live. You got it. It's that one show where I like to talk a little bit about RC, Redcat related, of course. But welcome back to the show. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome, enjoy. If you're watching on Facebook, even better. If you're watching a day later on YouTube, hey, awesome. Just so you guys know, we go live every Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Welcome back to the show. This is going to be a part 3 of our series that we've been having when it comes to the Monte Carlo and the modifications. In the last couple weeks, we actually went ahead and cut the top off of this purple Monte. We made a Hollywood top, leaving the back half of the roof still intact. And then we went ahead and made it a full convertible. Last week, there was some requests to see how exactly I cut the trunks open on these cars. So we left off with cutting the trunk open last week. So if you're just chiming in now and you're kind of jumping in and you wanted to kind of go back and see what exactly had been going on in the past, definitely go back and check it out. Let's see here. Like I'm getting a little bit more of delay than normal. So I do apologize, guys, if things are a little bit behind. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right, guys. So as I mentioned last week, where we left behind was part 3 of the series, where we're actually performing these cuts on these vehicles. Here we go. Brandon Tomey's in the house. What's going on, Brandon, man? Hopefully you're having a good one, bro. Thank you for chiming in all the way from good old Bay Area, California. Love it. I miss my home. His hometown, you know. But nonetheless, guys, you know, last week and the week before, we kind of went over a lot of details. The do's, the don'ts, some tips that kind of help you out, especially when you're making long cuts. Difference between an X-Acto blade or utility knife and Lexan scissors, and how it's kind of great to have all of those tools at your arsenal at your disposal, right? Tim Quintero, thank you so much, bro. That color is fire. So before we do dive really heavily into where we left off with the purple Monte, I kind of wanted to bring you guys a new product before we kind of get the things off and running. Let's see here. All right. So last week where we left off, one of the new products that we just released last week that we dropped is actually the 14 light plug-and-play lighting system for the Monte Carlo. As you guys can see it right there. I actually already equipped this Monte that you guys see here with the light kit itself. Let's go ahead and give this bad boy. There you go. They're on, right? Marker lights. You do end up getting the 2 bulbs per headlight. So 4 bulbs in the front for the headlights themselves, 1 bulb for each corner lens, and then you do end up getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 brake lights in the rear, and then 2 reverse lights. Depending on how you wire this up with the provided connectors, will give you reverse lights when you reverse, brake lights when you stop as well. It will integrate plugging in between your ESC, your electronic speed control, and the actual box itself. But there's a couple things that you guys should know about this specific box. It's not like the previous ones that we've released. One of the biggest and main changes that the engineers did when designing this new and improved lighting kit is that we saw a lot of people when they're playing with the RC cars and they have, you know, a high rate of power going through their vehicle, reef servos, you know, BEC running, or maybe not a BEC. Maybe you're running on a nickel metal hydrate and you're just, you know, pushing those sticks as much as you can, hopping it, making it go crazy, usually can cause a brownout, and or if you have an LED light kit, you start to notice that the lights start to dim and or flicker. So the engineers went back to the drawing board and said, you know what, I think we can do something to help minimize that effect to allow the lights to stay on more fluid-like and without less flickering. So what the team actually did, you guys can see it right there. Let me actually change screens here. There we go. You guys can see there's kind of a half dome shape, like a bump stop, or I say like a speed bump on the actual controller. And what that speed bump is inside there's a capacitor. We found that by adding a capacitor inside of the electronics, such as the LED light kit, it will store enough power. So we're going to kind of get into a little bit of electronics 101. When you're sitting there and you're demanding the most out of your vehicle and you're hopping and you're asking for all its power to be depleted at once, usually if you were to look at a graph of the power consumption, you would see a spike from immense power to complete depletion and then back up. Well, those spikes going up and down can leave what they call a dead zone. That dead zone is that time that bulb could shut off or starve the electronics that you're trying to feed. The capacitor being in line with the LED lights will help when you're doing all of those things avoid the spiking up and down of the power consumption and make it more of a wave-like effect, never reaching a maximum output and a maximum depletion, but still storing power. So when you're in high demand, it takes the power from the capacitor to make up for the starvation of your electronics at that time, thus hopefully minimizing the flickering that we've been seeing with a lot of folks. Take in mind when you're talking about a diode and an LED light, flickering does happen, and through the naked eye, a lot of us can't hardly tell that there's an actual flickering happening. It's happening at such a high velocity rate that usually slow motion cameras tend to catch those flickering motions. So rest assured, we try to think a little bit outside the box when we designed this. The engineers did a great job at testing this thing profusely, and we really like what they came up with. Now, how does this bad boy go into effect? How does it get installed? All right, so removing this bad boy up. Let's turn this off. So let's kind of go over to the overhead camera here really quick. All right, there we go. So in the overhead camera, you're going to notice that I've actually removed the wire that goes to your speed control, and I just teed it off with the supplied harness in the kit. This supplied harness is going in between your electronic speed control and the light kit. From here, you will plug it in to the actual light kit. At that point, then you would distribute lights to all of the locations on the vehicle. Installation is actually a lot easier, in my opinion, on the Monte Carlo than it was on the 64. The 64 did not have retainers for the light buckets, so a lot of people had to use either CA glue or hot glue to keep them in place. Thankfully, the Monte Carlo did come with the supplied retainers. Let's see if I can get this to focus there. There we go. You guys can see the retainers on the actual wires there. And that keeps the LED lights in the actual housings themselves. So as you can tell from the way I wired it, you have your bulbs in the rear, your 3 brake lights on either side, a reverse light on both inner LED locations, or buckets, I should say. You have 2 hyper white bulbs for each headlamp lens, and then you're going to have an amber bulb for each corner lens, making it a total of a 14 light kit. The kits are now available on our website if you want to go out and check them out and get a set. They are usable on other products that we offer as well. Specifically, the capacitor, I think, is kind of the biggest thing for me. It was definitely a good selling point for me to have. Adding any kind of fail-safe things to these modules is great, right? Especially when the guys back there are trying to think of ways to maximize how you use your vehicle. Let me double check. Yoshi Rivera is in the house. What's going on, Yoshi? All right, guys. So yeah, so LED light kit, As mentioned, it's available now on our website. I don't believe I had enough time to put it on the description, so I do apologize. In the light kit itself, you will find these, what they call like little pills. Let's see if you guys can see them there. There you go. Depending on the location in which you install these pills, will give you functionality for how you want the lights to work. Do you want reverse lights? No reverse lights. Brake lights? No brake lights. It all gets talked about in the little owner's manual, so make sure you read that, like always. In the kit, you will also find a couple self-adhesive stickies so that you can find a location to mount your module, as well as some plastic retainers so that you can then hide your wires there and, there and there. Just helping keep it clean. You will also get a handful of zip ties to help clean up and keep that wiring nice and tidy and away from anything that might grab or snag or get caught up in any moving parts. So there it is. Light kit is there. The wiring harnesses are here. All the lights are included, all 14 bulbs. You do get your T-harness, and they actually give you an extra one. I've found that I've only needed to use one. I do not have a use for a second one, but it's really cool that they have a fail-safe per the instructions and have all of that included for you. Louis Alcala, what's going on? Ryan Aquaman, man, I got all the heavy hitters. Danny LeBose in the house. Man, I love you guys, man. You guys are awesome. Love when you guys hang out with me. So there it is, guys. That is the Redcat RC Lowriders light kit available now on our website. So head on over there if you're interested and want to pick one up. Jeff Ramos, mi hermano, how are you, sir? All right, guys. Usually I have another screen right here in front of me where I read comments. Unfortunately, I am not as prepared as normal. So I'm reading comments off my phone while simultaneously navigating the software, and we're going to cut this bad boy up at the same time. So if you've been here and been a part of the last couple of episodes, thank you. You guys are the real MVPs for being a part of it. I hope that my videos, although I'm horrible at making them, are intuitive and at least some form of educational assistance to you. And if you're in the market to do these kinds of modifications, I hope that it does you justice. And if there's something that I can do better for you, or if you have questions that you have for future episodes, please bring them on. We're always eager to hear what our community members want and like to see. So let's go back into the overhead camera, guys. I know last week what sparked us cutting the roof was some folks asking how I cut the trunk. Some folks asked how I cut the trunk on my training day Monte Carlo. I mentioned that I actually had to print out some hinges, and these hinges are what are going to attach to the inside of the vehicle, then allowing the trunk to open, right? These hinges, I actually found the file for on Thingiverse. I have a very low-grade, inexpensive 3D printer, and so I just print these up for myself. There are some people that do print on our page. Make sure you check them. Do some follow-through and some investigating before you just order. There's a couple guys out there that do good jobs. I know Uzu is really good at printing these and getting them out to people. Jesse Macias prints some 3D printed parts. I'm just not sure if he offers these or not. If he does, another great option and a great person to buy from. If you don't want to do that, you can actually source through some websites. Shapeways is one, and if you find something similar to what you're looking for with these hinges, and let me change screens here. I'll show you a little bit more about how they look. So it's a two-part hinge. This is one part, and the other part is the larger part. You can see I can collapse them. In the closed position, they will look like this. When the trunk opens, it pushes the trunk lid up to that point. Now, you do have to install a 1.5 millimeter screw or nut to keep them in place. I found hot glue tends to work really good on these Lexan bodies, but the problem with it is if you're outdoors and showing off your car and it's over 95 degrees, hot glue tends to get soft and usually separate. So I'm still playing with something that won't damage the paint trying to find solutions thereof. I find that I do end up having to hot glue these, you know, every time I'm out in excessive heats, because they do tend to pop off of the actual Lexan itself. Louis Alcala, he says he bought his through Dark Dragon's Wing on eBay or Facebook. They are ready to use. Dark Wing is a great dude to buy. And in fact, I have, I believe, a couple files that I've used of his, and they work great. In the description for this video, you're going to find a link to some files that will work for hinges as well. You can check out off of Thingiverse. Some people print without pride, so be safe, y'all, Louis says. And that's true. It's unfortunate, but true. All right, guys, so back to the gist. Last week, we left off with starting to cut the trunk open. We had, at that point, scored the complete top and the sides, starting to cut through the corners. So let's go ahead and wrap that up. Let's get that taken care of. Let's open it up, and let's see what is going to be exposed underneath. As mentioned before, when you're cutting underneath, there is a separate layer of Lexan that at some point you're going to have to cut through. But we'll get there. Don't worry about that. I'll show you how that goes once we get to that point. Felix Delgadillo, what's going on, man? How are you? Yoshi Rivera's in the house. What's good, sir? All right, so as mentioned last week, we already started scoring it. We weakened the structure. Like always, let's take off the interior panel. Let's move that out of the way. All right, so at this point, I've already weakened this top location by scoring it over and over and over again. So at this point, if I were to squeeze like that, you can start seeing it starting to separate already. So let's see if we can get the rest of it to separate. And this is, once you score it enough and you can manipulate the plastic, you can tend to snap it. Once that groove is made in the plastic, it's going to find a indentation so that when you push forward or upwards, it literally puts enough pressure that it snaps the Lexan, and it gives you a pretty clean line depending on how straight of a line you use to score, you know, originally. So that's already separated from what you guys can see right there. So we're just going to take our blade. I like these personally. I get these off of Amazon. I believe I buy the sets of 2 or 3 with like 100 blades, and I do go through them quite often. And it's kind of the kind of blades when you destroy them, you just snap, you have another one exposed, and then when you're done with that, you just keep refilling it as you go. So we're going to go ahead and, since it's already started separating, I'm just going to reach in there and get the corner like that, and now we're separated completely from that top layer, right? Let me make sure, put this right here, so that in case I get some comments, I can read them. There we go. Perfect, see? All right, so now that we got that upper corner released, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to actually grab this section. I'm going to just push on this corner to see if I can get it to that opening to run a little bit on me. And it did a little bit more. So now my gap, I should say, the opening is to about right there. Not too bad. Take in mind, this section of the car is double sticky taped to that lower section. So I'm just trying to get down here and here at this point. So again, with the utility knife, we're going to get to work, and we're going to go ahead and keep scoring. Now, these are the moments where things can go horribly wrong if you're not careful. Getting a little overzealous and a little excited because, hey, oh my gosh, I'm almost there. That's usually when I personally make the most mistakes. So keep that in mind. Just because you see the finish line in sight doesn't mean you need to hammer down on the pedal when it comes to cutting Lexan. Still take your time. It's going to get done one way or the other. What I'm doing right now is I'm taking my blade, finding the groove, and I'm literally just like a saw going back and forth, again, weakening that Lexan as much as I can. I'm going to do the exact same procedure on the other side, find that groove, and then just keep working the blade up and down. Again, maximizing that cavity that's being created from your blade, scoring the Lexan. All right. Let's see if I can, at this point, you can take your blade. You might be able to extend it a little bit more. What I like about these is they have a lock on them. So you can lock them in place and the blade won't go out or in a little bit anymore. Take your blade, let it fall into the gap you've already created. Let's go ahead and see if we can get the rest of it to start separating. Louis is absolutely right. Louis says, disclaimer, Redcat does not warranty for loss of fingers due to impatience. Or, in other words, you know, cut at your own risk, right? I would say I'm a professional, but I wouldn't call myself a professional by any means. But I like to say, hey, you know, this was done on a secure set with professionals, cut at own risk. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually trying to separate a little bit of the layer that's underneath, and I'm sticking my fingers inside of it so that I can separate some of that double sticky tape. So as you can see now, there should be a gap separating the trunk from that panel underneath. Now that it's separated and it's no longer holding on to it, I'm hoping that I can lift a little bit at a time. And if I did my job correctly in scoring as much as possible, as I pull on the lid, it will continue separating. Let me loosen that up. All right, got that corner just about done. And now I'm just going to let the blade do its work, or its job, I should say. Going down that nice line that I created originally. We're going to go ahead and pull, pull, pull. Bow! There we go. And now we're separated right there. So we're going to do the same thing to this side. I'm keeping my fingers here to, again, keep the double sticky tape separated. Pulling and pulling and pulling. You can see there it is. There's your trunk lid. And as you can see, your adhesive patches, your Velcros are still on the trunk lid. I'll show you guys what to do with those a little later when it comes to the hinges being installed. So now you're going to have that lower layer, I should say the inner layer, still exposed, right? Here you can do a couple things. You can choose to cut. Let me see if I can get this on camera. The glare is so bad, guys. Let me turn this light around a little bit. There we go. Did I cut my baby finger? No, no cuts. All right, so at this point, you can choose to do a couple things. You can either A, cut using the guide, setting your blade on the inside and using that as a guide, you can score that inner piece. For me personally, what I did with my Monte Carlo was I wanted to keep this section intact. So if we were to take our time and peel off the double stick adhesive, it'll give you, if you're smart enough anyways, you can apply a very small magnet on the trunk lid and then another small magnet on the inside of this Lexan right around right here, and that'll keep your trunk lid closed. Right? What is that saying? Again, I say it all the time. There's no replacement for displacement. Once you cut too much, you can't add back on. So take off a little bit at a time. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my fingers underneath so that I keep the two layers together. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start scoring. You guys have seen this before many times. And then you do the same thing on this side. Keep scoring it, keep scoring it, keep scoring it. And then at that point, I would cut a nice straight line. Due to the fact that we're on a show and we're limited to time, I'm going to go ahead and use some Lexan scissors, going against what I've been telling you guys that I like to personally do. But again, this is just to speed things up. I'd say this is for Hollywood, but I mean, I'm not all that. Hollywood. All right. There we go. Taking your scissors. I'm literally using the same guide that's already there. Right? That side right here and right here already exists because you already created it. It's already going to be fairly as straight as can be, right? Now that that's cut, I can go ahead and bring in the scissors from, actually, you know what? I am going to come in at an angle so that I can get a straight line. So I cut in at an angle. I'm going to go ahead and start at the opposite side now. Like that. Now I have a nice opening so that when I'm trying to work my scissors in, I don't get myself caught up with the edge. And remember what I said, guys, it's easier to cut a little bit off at a time than cutting too much off. So to give myself a little more room to work with, I'm going to go ahead and leave a little bit more on than I like to. And then I'll go back and clean it up. Thank you, Yoshi. Thank you. I had a good sensei back in the day. He taught me well. All right, here we go. So I don't know if anyone on here is watching from Colorado, but after this episode, your boy gets to go home, grab his things, and we're heading to Colorado Springs, actually, for the Lowrider Super Show out there. So we're pretty excited to head out there. To be a first time that Redcat has an opportunity to visit Colorado to that, capacity. So if you're in town, if you're planning on going, stop by, say what's up to us. We're looking forward to seeing as many people as possible and having a good time. Can't tell you where the after party is going to be at because my wife might be watching, but after party, here we go. Nothing like a taco party. And remember, guys, what I said before too, when you're doing these cuts, especially if it's going to be a part that's going to open and close, you got to give yourself enough room to play with, right? You got to give that enough of a gap all the way around. And you can sit there with your blade and just kind of keep shaving as you go, and whatnot. Or you can just get a little bit of sandpaper, clean off the edges, and just give it enough room so that the trunk lid has enough motion to open and close. Now, when you were to open it, it would rely on the hinges. Now, the hinges are going to be mounted to the interior tray of the car itself and the lid because the structure right here is just way too weak. One could strengthen this location up. Listen, this is going to sound obscure, but you can use a chopstick if you wanted to strengthen that up. A straw. What else? Gosh, there's this. My mind's drawing a blank. Gosh, there's this white stuff they use from the hobby store, and my mind's drawing a blank. Gosh, I hate when that happens. It'll come to me at some point, but you can use some things to strengthen this up so that it doesn't flop around on you guys like that so much, if it helps any. Now, take into consideration too, when you are remounting this back on, you're going to have to come up with a solution to keep this attached. Now, what I would suggest is potentially double sticky taping underneath here, all the pieces, a couple strips of it to keep it attached. Also, utilizing some on the seams. You could also use double sticky tape up here, flip it over, using hot glue on the seams to keep it in place, right? The front will be okay. It's being held on by Velcro, but to make sure the sides are held in place so it doesn't fall out, you can use some hot glue. That works really well for me. It doesn't get hot enough to deform the Lexan, but it'll be, good enough for that. Now what you do is when you have your hinges, right, you do have a right and a left side. You can see they're slightly shaped a little differently. So if you were to put them in the back, this section right here will be mounted to the actual tray. This section will be mounted to the trunk itself. So they would lay, you put the trunk in there really quick. So the trunk is there. What you can do is you can actually cut a section off right here and then mount these back here. That'll then allow the trunk to swivel up and down. So let me show you what I mean by that. And I'm just going to give myself a quick reference line with my blade. There is a left and a right side with these, Felix. You can see the shape of them are going to be different. See that? So you flip them around. So there is no, you can't use this one on top of that one. So there is a left and a right on this specific set. There are some other ones that work that may be universal that don't have that bend. I like the ones with the bends because it allows me to move the hinges to the furthest outer point of the location so that they don't look like they're in the way. And if you're like me that likes to put audio systems in your Monte Carlos or your Impalas, it just gives you a little more breathing room. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Lexan scissors, now that I've created a little bit of a line, I should say a guide. All right. All right, so now that I cut that gap, that opening, if you were to have the trunk in place, like so, lay your interior on, get it in there. Now you have that exposed location so that when you take your hinge, and it were to be, oops, that one would be that side. Okay, so let's get the other one. If you were to mount it there, see if I can lift this whole thing up so you guys can see. There we go. It would look like that right there. So then when you were to open the trunk, that hinge will then collapse attached to the trunk itself. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell, guys. Having resources is huge. So being able to rely on people, whether it's a 3D printer and or if you want to use something like Shapeways where they can print them for you and ship them to you, are viable options. There are some hobby shops that offer 3D printing services as well and or offer hinges that can be used. I actually tried many times to use airplane hinges and had very, very bad luck with it. They just didn't seem to offer what I needed, right? They were like a flat on flat type of movement, and they wouldn't allow the trunk to open. It would have to literally, like your elbow, up and down. And what I love about these hinges is when they're flat, you have this gap, I should say, in between that when you collapse it, it lifts it up, but it separates the trunk from the back, right? So that it separates it enough that you can actually open it and close it without it binding on itself. The less binding you have, the better, because if you bind, what usually tends to happen is it's going to just pull apart with your double sticky tape or your hot glue. It's just not going to hold for very long. Felix, no, so there are some files, brother, that they offer. Felix says, dang, I must have gotten the wrong set because mine are both identical. There's a couple versions of these. The ones that I got, I always choose to do the left and the right side. They also have the simplified versions that are straight. They don't have that S shape, you know, to them like you see here. So it may be that you got the right set, you just got that set, you know, and that's okay as well. There is no wrong way when you're modifying a car, and I think Felix can attest to this because he's got some pretty awesome cars, right? It's a matter of stepping out of your comfort zone and having a good time with it and enjoying what you're doing within the hobby. You guys just saw me hack up what could be a $150 body. You know, a lot of you people might cringe at the fact of like, why did I just do that? You know, I've just destroyed it. Or a lot of you guys can be like, you know what? I see that as I was really freaked out about it, and now I feel a lot better about it. And I hope that is what you take from this. You know, I make mistakes every single day. When I'm cutting and I'm doing things, this could have gone 100 different ways live on air. I could have ended up missing a digit. I could have ended up with a really crooked line that I just messed up on. That is the gamble that you're taking when you're doing these kinds of things. But it kind of goes with everything you do in life, right? If you want to do something that sets you apart from the rest, you got to step out of your comfort zone and do it. So I'm really excited, guys, to wrap up the show. We have a great couple months lined up for you guys. A lot of cool stuff to share with you guys. I wish I could just word bomb it and tell you about all the awesomeness, you know, that is always going on in the back scenes. But nonetheless, we're working on some great stuff and we're having a great time doing it. And we know that if we're enjoying that process, that you're going to equally enjoy it as well. Your boy's leaving. We're going to Colorado. We're going to be out there. Again, if you're out there, stop by, say hi. If you're building a SEMA build-off ride, man, I want to see it. Let's get those bad boys going. So start sharing them using the proper hashtags. We'll start pulling those pictures up of vehicles that are catching our eye, and we'll start sharing them with everyone as well so that they can see what is out there and, you know, what kind of competition they have in store for them. So for me, to all of you guys, all of us here at Redcat, we want to wish you guys a good rest of your week. Please be safe. We're off to Colorado, and we'll see you guys next week with hopefully some pictures and who knows, maybe something else that's fun as well. So for me to you guys, stay safe. We'll see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I don't even know why you guys want to come by and keep looking at my face, though. Anyways, you guys stay safe. We'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.